You know, I talk a lot about relationship dynamics once you're in the relationship. But I think a very important discussion that we're not having is how do you vet your partner before you get into the relationship in the first place so that you can minimize the amount of problems that you have. This is so important. You know, in general, and I include myself in this statement, we do relationships so badly. Isn't it ironic that the one thing we will all get involved in is a relationship, and yet none of us know how to do it. We're not taught, no one teaches us, we don't learn this at school, and yet we spend the majority of our lives in one. It's mental. So the topic of today's discussion is going to be how to vet a potential spouse, how women can vet men, how men can vet women, both ways. Now, I would like to add as a disclaimer that what you're about to hear, some of it may be backed by evidence, some of it may just purely be my opinion, and some of it might sound totally outrageous. And you are free to ignore me. You are free to reject what I'm saying. You're free to challenge what I'm saying. You don't have to accept it. A lot of what I speak of is based on anecdotal experience, and a lot of what I speak of is based upon the experience of others that I've either interacted with personally or read about in books, in journals, online, and so on. You're free to take it or leave it. Totally up to you. It's my opinion. Okay? So, as I said, the topic of today's discussion, and I will be referring to my notes because every time I do a live, I come off and I'm like, I forgot to say that. I should have said that. So today I've got notes so that hopefully I don't have that problem. How do you know whether the individual you are looking at is an individual who you can last a lifetime with? And this is what we want, guys. What we want is once we commit to marriage, the ideal is to commit to marriage for a lifetime till death do us part, right? Do us part. Those are the vows that you read if you get married at the church, right? Until death do us part. So with that being the case, if you are going to spend a lifetime with someone, we need to make sure that we have a vetting procedure in place, just as if you went to apply for a job today at any respectable or reputable company, they're going to do their background checks on you. They are going to vet you. That's what they're going to do. They're not just going to take you on because they like what they like how you look and you had a great chat and then hope for the best. Nah. They're going to look at your CV. They're going to ring up your previous employers. They're going to find out wagwan with you. The full 9 yards. Why? So that they can increase the likelihood of you being a successful recruit. Well, we need to do the same thing in marriage. And today I'm going to address 3 points which I believe are very, very important when it comes to vetting your spouse. Vetting your spouse, or I should say potential spouse. So let's get right to it. 3 points. I'll list them off to you and then I will explain them. So firstly and foremostly, the father role. 2 things here. What's her relationship like with her father, if it's a girl? And what type of model did he have to learn from his father, if it's a boy? Okay, again, one more time. What type of relationship does a girl have with her dad? And what type of modeling did a boy have from his father? That's the first point. The second point we will be talking about is multiple failed long-term relationships, particularly amongst the women. And I will explain why as we go along. It's the second point. Multiple failed LTRs affects women worse than men. And I will get to that. So that's the second point. And then the third point is, what's the quality of their family like? What's his or her sister like? His or her brother, mother, father, and on and on. What's that family like? Now, some of this might even sound traditional to you. It's like, oh, that's how they used to do it in the olden days. We don't do it like that now. Let me tell you something. From the beginning of time, when human beings were first created, to now, do you know how much has changed? Pretty much nothing. We are the same creatures. technology changes, buildings go up, buildings come down, and so on. The species fundamentally remains the same. Nothing changes. And vetting the family is one of those things which our elders, I don't want to say ancestors, but our elders, they knew what they were talking about. So we're going to get straight to it. The quality of relationship between a girl and her father. Let's talk about that first. Why is this so important? The first relationship that a girl has with a man, any man, is that with her father. The role of a father in the life of his daughter can quite literally make or break her. If he's a good man and he has a healthy relationship with his daughter, all is well. Her image of men is not tainted. All is well. However, if her relationship with her father is strained in any way, shape or form, or worse still, broken, guess what? The first relationship that she ever had, if it's broken, will set a negative precedent for every single relationship she has thereafter with men, with males. Requests, I'm going to bring you one afterwards. If you want to go live with me, excellent. I've been live with someone for a while, but it will be after I finish this spiel here. So moving on. If a girl has had a broken relationship with her father or continues to have a broken relationship with her father, this is going to negatively impact her ability to pair bond with a man. Make no bones about it. Now, that's speaking from a research perspective, and I can tell you from an anecdotal perspective. I've been married to 2 women who both had the proverbial daddy issues without sounding patronizing. Let's say they both had broken relationships with their fathers. Absolute disaster. Their ability to pair bond is severely compromised. Severely compromised. Whose fault is it? Is it dad's fault? Is it her fault? Is irrelevant. That's not the topic of discussion. My point is this. If you come into contact with a girl and this girl has a broken relationship with her father, the red flag needs to go up. Now, if you're watching this on YouTube, I'm going to put the 5 red flag videos that you guys need to watch out for when it comes to women. You can watch that. It will be up here somewhere now. If you're watching this on Instagram, again, you can go onto my YouTube and find that video. So, gentlemen, broken relationship with her father, this is an indication that she will have a broken relationship with you. Take it or leave it. You don't have to accept it from me. Now, let's talk about the son. If the son has a father who, let's say the father has commitment issues, or the father is a rake, he has a revolving door of women on his roster and none of them he commits to. Or the father is not a respectable man, or the father is a criminal, or the father is a drug dealer, or the father is a racist, on and on and on. On and on. This is the model that the son has had to look at, to view. How do you think the son's going to come out? More than likely, he's going to come out from the exact same, the mold that he came from, he's going to be the same as that. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. It does not fall far from the tree. And I'll prove it to you. I'll talk about one of my weaknesses. When I grew up, I saw my father going through quite a lot of, shall we say, tests. My mum was very ill for a long time. And I saw him committed to her through thick and thin, like committed to the nth degree like you wouldn't know. To the nth degree. He modeled that for me. I saw that. I took that mindset and I applied it to my own relationships. However, to the point where it began to cause me detriment. I began harming myself. I was committed to my wives to the point where even when they transgressed certain boundaries, I didn't have the courage to implement certain consequences, to check them, to straighten out affairs, especially the mother of my children, because I was too scared for her to take the kids away from me. So this commitment ended up becoming a vice of mine, and I've recognized it. I have recognized it, and I know that I take commitment too far. Once I commit to a woman, as this has been the case in the past, I commit to the point where I will allow her to basically walk all over me to a point. I'm not going to say I became beta-tized or anything. It's just that I would allow a lot of shit to slide. A lot of shit to slide. And this is because I saw my father committed to my mother through thick and thin when she was very ill, which was a good thing. But I took that good thing and started harming myself by being overly committed, you could say. Quite literally, to the point where I was scared to check my women. I'd keep my mouth silent. I wouldn't say anything just to keep the peace. Or I would allow them to repeatedly do A, B, and C without checking them. This is bad. Don't think this is good. This is a bad thing. Okay? That's my example. I'll give you another example. I had a gentleman. Okay, we'll leave that example for now. I'll get to that afterwards. Where is that related to? Yeah, okay, fine. Now, I've spoken about the impact of the father, but the mother also has an impact as well. Why did I speak about the father first? The reason why is because in most households, the father is the dominant figure. Usually, the dad is the head of the household. His influence is the dominant influence in the household. He has the final say. However, there are exceptions to this rule. There are households where the mother is dominant and the father is quite passive. Now, I'll tell you a short story. I had a gentleman. He messaged me on Instagram a few months ago. And he said to me, I just want to make myself perfectly vulnerable with you here. He said, I was raised by a very passive father, and my mum is very much the boss in the household. Like, what she says goes. He said, for example, whenever I ask my dad, can I do something? He says, go and ask your mother. Go and get permission from her. And he said, so one day I was at this camp, this football camp, where I was taking care of a bunch of children. And he said, these children were running riot over me. I had absolutely no authority over these children whatsoever. And then this young lady, a couple years younger than him, comes along, and he said to me, this young woman had these children in rank and file, under complete manners, such that, he said, it made me feel so intimidated. I felt so intimidated by this girl who was 2 years younger than me and able to have all these children in order, under manners, and yet I couldn't. I felt completely intimidated by her. And I'll tell you what was going on here. Dominant mothers create passive, weak sons. I'll say it again. When a mother is the domineering and dominating force in the household, she does not empower her son to also become dominant and domineering. Rather, she squashes his masculinity. Because the son looks at her and thinks, right, dad's a pussy, mum's the dominant force, I'm a guy, I should be a pussy. That's the math that goes on in his head. And so he models that behavior. He models it. It's perfectly rational. We model what we see. Now, it goes one step further. Sadly, for these young men, is that when they go to look for a partner to get into a relationship with, they tend to look for women that were like their mothers. Very domineering and dominating. It's the norm for them. That's what feels natural to them. They don't feel comfortable taking a leading role or a dominating role. They feel comfortable taking a passive role whereby a lady takes their hand and holds their hand and tells them exactly what to do. Why? Because that's what they saw, the dynamic, the relationship dynamic between mum and dad. It was exactly the same. Mum and dad had that type of relationship. Dad was a pussy and mum was the domineering force in the household. Therefore, I should model the same thing. Now, generally speaking, ladies, you should not consider marrying a man like this. Generally speaking. However, there are exceptions, just as there are exceptions to girls who have broken relationships with their father. And I will tell you what they are. I once had a young lady, some of you may remember, with the hijabi sister. She came onto my Instagram live and she said to me, you know what? I don't like what you're saying, but everything you're speaking of regarding the breakdown of a relationship between daughter and father and the impact it has on me, on a girl, said, you're absolutely right. Those type of individuals who recognize they have a problem, there's hope for them. And that's why I say they are an exception. You can't just paint the brush and say, these guys are write-offs and you can't marry them. Why? Because the first step to fixing yourself is to recognize. Recognize that you have a problem to begin with. If you can recognize that you have a problem to begin with, then you can start taking steps towards fixing yourself. Equally, this young man who messaged me on Instagram and said to me that he was unable to tame these wild children, and then when this girl came along, she had them under manners. This gentleman here, also there is hope for him. If, and it's a big if, he's recognized the issue, now the if is, will he take steps to rectify the problem? If he does, and he seeks the relevant help that he needs, whether it's taking on a mentor, being mentored, or getting therapy in the case of the girl if she's got broken issues with her father, or taking steps towards mending that relationship, if they take those steps, then they can fix themselves. So I will put that tiny category of individuals to the side as an exception and say those individuals, there's hope for them. However, most people never accept that they have a problem. Most people, if you've been watching my lives for a while, you see them, they come on, they're defiant, they're arrogant, they refuse to accept they have a problem, and they propagate this notion of, you should love me as I am. You should accept me for who I am. Garbage. Absolute nonsense. We are all broken. We all need fixing. The thing is, some of us are more broken than others. And those individuals who refuse to recognize they have a problem, she refuses to recognize that her broken relationship with her father has harmed her. He refuses to recognize that having a weak father in the household and a domineering mother has made him weak. Those individuals who refuse to recognize there's a problem, there's no hope for them. Stay away from them. Well, I say it again. Stay away from them. They are no good. So again, point number one, if a girl has a broken relationship with her dad, or a boy was raised by a weak father and an overly dominating mother, stay away from these individuals. Point number one. Let's move on to point two. Right. Good. Multiple failed long-term relationships. And I'm speaking now specifically to the women. And I will tell you why it's different for men. But we're going to start off with the women. If you come across a lady who has multiple failed long-term relationships, specifically of an intimate nature, meaning she was physically intimate with this man, this woman's ability to pair bond with another man afterwards diminishes dramatically. There's one study that I read on the Institute for Family Studies, where it outlined that women who have had multiple intimate partners suffer from a diminished ability to be happy in a marriage. Their marital happiness declines significantly. There's another study that I read which shows a positive correlation between high body count amongst ladies and BPD, borderline personality disorders, as well as substance abuse. And the only way I can describe it for you is like this, and this is my opinion. You're free to take it, you're free to leave it. Men are like stamps. We stamp women. Women, they're a blank canvas. You ladies are like a blank canvas. And we are stamps. We come along and we stamp you with our print. Hence the term alpha widow. If you know what an alpha widow is a woman who was once with a man whom they parted ways for whatever reason, she never got over him. That's an alpha widow. Okay? Men are stamps. We stamp women with our mark. The more stamps she has had, the more confused the picture looks. Imagine a canvas, a blank canvas. You put one stamp on it, looks great. You put two stamps on it, starts to look a bit weird. You put 6, 7 stamps on it and it looks an utter mess. Complete mess. Women who have been stamped by many men find it extremely difficult to pair bond, and the stats are also in agreement with this. First time divorce, 50%. Second time divorce goes up to 65%. 65%. And the vast majority of those divorces are initiated by women. Up to 80% of divorces are initiated by women. Why? Why is that? Well, again, I'm going to give you my opinion why I believe women who have been through multiple failed long-term relationships continue to fail at an ever-increasing abysmal rate. I believe when a woman has a bad experience of a relationship, a bad breakup, she's hurt, right? Because she's hurt, she doesn't naturally want to be hurt again. So she'll do two things. She'll either put up walls and self-sabotage, or the moment she feels a bit of negative tension in the relationship, she's like, oh no. This is bringing back bad memories, bad feelings. Don't want to go there. And she taps out immediately. She taps out. Hence why the majority of divorces are initiated by women. She doesn't want to feel that pain again. Understandable, but of course the better option would be to get the right help that you need. Seek advice, go counseling, therapy, whatever the case may be. So that's my personal opinion, why I believe women who have had multiple failed LTRs, they tend to just become even worse at being able to pair bond. Now, I will make another exception here. And that exception is for one-time divorcees. Women who have been married once, the marriage came to an end for whatever reason, it was a bad marriage, whatever, and then they went their separate ways. I will make an exception for this one woman, but not for all of them, for some of them. And I'll tell you why. It is genuinely possible that you got into a relationship with someone and this individual turned out to be not very good for you. Turned out to be a really bad match. Maybe he was a psychopath. Maybe he was beating her every day. I personally know someone, much older than myself. Excuse me. First time she was married, she was beaten daily, badly. Beaten badly on a daily basis. She got her divorce. She left the marriage. She married again. 50 years later, she's still married. 50 years later, she's still married. Her second marriage turned out to be perfectly fine. So there are people who sometimes just get into a really bad situation. But when you've got a woman who's got 3, 4, 5, 6 divorces on her record, and she's still sitting there insisting that she hasn't found the right man, gentlemen, red flag needs to go up in the air. As well as the fact that this woman has been stamped multiple times by multiple different men. Her ability to pair bond is diminished dramatically. Women are not designed to be able to function well after having been with multiple men in an intimate setting. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. Men, less so. Men can be intimate, physically intimate with tons of women and it not really affect their ability to pair bond. Hence why when the Vikings would go on expeditions to Britain or to wherever, they would kill the men and rape and pillage the women. It's just the way men function. Is it right? Of course it's not right. I'm just saying it's the way men have functioned for millennia. You don't ever hear in history of women conquering a country and then raping and pillaging the men. It just sounds ridiculous even saying it. It doesn't happen. So a woman's ability to pair bond after being intimately involved with 2+ men becomes diminished dramatically. Dramatically. Any girl that you see boasting about her whole phase, thank you very much, Habibti. You have advertised for the whole of the world that we should stay far away from you. Thank you for telling us. Okay. Right. Now the final one is the quality of the family. What is the family like? Okay, you've got a girl, she's got a good relationship with her father. You've got a boy, he's got a solid father who he has modeled. I have a question for you now though. What's the brothers like? What are the sisters like? What's the grandma like? What's the whole family like as a whole? Let me tell you why. I've said before, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. And an individual who is raised in a positive environment tends to be positive, just as if you spend 2 hours in a perfume shop, what are you going to come out smelling of? You're going to come out smelling of the beautiful scents in the perfume shop, right? Equally, if you spend a couple of hours on a farm next to where all the horse manure is, what are you going to come out smelling of? Horse manure. Now you might turn around and tell me, but Mahdi, that's not fair. Some people are genuinely raised by horrible people, alcoholic father, promiscuous mother. That's not their fault. I say, I agree. I didn't say it was their fault. I simply said, if you spend time on a farm, you're going to come out smelling of shit. It's just the way it goes. You can't help it. It's the way it goes. If you spend time in a perfumery, you're going to come out smelling of perfume. Now you might say, but people can change. Okay, I say this. If an individual was raised in a highly toxic environment, they can change, but Those toxic traits tend to come out when they are under pressure. One more time. Those toxic traits that they were brought up in, they tend to come out when they're under pressure. Pressure of any sort. Could be an argument between husband and wife and he starts, swearing left and right. Or, she starts, I don't know, just think of any toxic traits that you can think of. Maybe she starts throwing plates at him because that's what she saw her mother doing growing up, or even her father doing. So these negative habits tend to come out when we're under pressure. Can people change? Yes. Do most people change? No. Most people don't change because they don't recognize that they have a problem to begin with. So I say to you this: do you want to maximize your chances of getting into a marriage and making it work for a lifetime? That's what we want right now. That's what we want here. You want to marry someone and it lasts a lifetime. Not 1 year, not 5 years, not 20 years. Your life, your entire life. So with that being the case, you need to vet the family, make sure they come from a good family, a sound, solid family. There's no drug dealers left and right. There's no hoes or I don't know what. Because if you are getting into a family like that, well, again, if you spend time on a farm long enough, you will come out smelling of shit. That's the bottom line. So again, just to recap, what's the relationship like between girl and her dad? And what type of father did the boy have to model? First point. Second point, multiple failed LTRs, long-term relationships. For the women, if she's had multiple failed LTRs, guess what? Her ability to pair bond is ever diminished. Ever diminishes. From each relationship that she goes on to, the likelihood of that relationship working drops every single time. Second point. Third point, quality of the family. You're not just marrying her or him. Remember, you're marrying the family. You are marrying into the family, and he or she came out of the mold of the family. So, one more time. Yes, if there's a bad family background, it's not their fault. But I am telling you, if you spend enough time on a farm, you're going to come out smelling of shit. So pick a family. Pick a girl or a guy who comes from a decent family. There's plenty of them. And leave the ones who come from bad families for everyone else. Okay, let's go through some of these questions.